Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Construction Specifiers inaugural demo cast on DensDefy Accessories by Georgia Pacific. My name is Nitya, and I'll be moderating today's presentation. Before I introduce the speaker, please note your mics are muted, and it would be best if you turn on the speaker view. That said, if you have any questions for our speaker, please feel free to post them in the Q&A forum. We will address as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. If you have any connectivity or Zoom-related questions, you can use the chat feature to communicate with us, and we'll do our best to help you. Today's presentation is being recorded. It will be available on the Construction Specifier website, so you can access it whenever you need to. Now, I'd like to introduce our speaker. John Chamberlain is a Senior Product Manager at Georgia Pacific. He has worked in the building products industry for most of his professional life, focusing on new product development for the building envelope. In today's presentation, John will provide an overview of the DensElement Barrier System, including the DensDefy liquid flashing and DensDefy transition membrane products. With that, I'll turn things over to John.
Thank you, Nidya, and thanks to everyone who has taken some time out of their afternoon to join me today. As Nidya mentioned, my name is John Chamberlain. I am with Georgia Pacific. I'm a product manager. And today I'm going to talk through our DensElement Barrier System, as well as introduce you all to our new accessories just launched earlier this year, the DensDefy line of products and accessories. So just a little bit of background and history. I think everyone is very familiar with Georgia Pacific, or at least I hope so, rather. Of course, since 1986, Georgia Pacific has been especially well known for our exterior glass mat faced gypsum panels, Dens Glass Gold. And yeah, it's been over 30 years now since that gold color on the exterior walls has been a sign and a reassurance to building owners and designers and contractors that a premium product is being used and that quality and concern are really going into the design and construction of buildings. But Dens Glass Gold didn't operate only in a vacuum. So going back a little bit further, just kind of remind everyone, you know, we all recognized in the 60s that gypsum was a wonderful material to use because we didn't want our buildings to burn. And gypsum has some inherent properties that allow it to cool down areas that might be subject to fire, and really act as a wonderful protective material in the case that there is a fire in or outside of the building. This kind of evolved into what became paper-faced gypsum sheathing. Again, a wonderful material in terms of fire to be used as an exterior gypsum sheathing, but not great in terms of water, and specifically because that paper has an opportunity to absorb water, which might have some negative effects, or did back in the 70s, right? So fast forward to the 80s, and specifically to 1986, and as I mentioned already, Georgia Pacific introduced Dens Glass Gold. And now with the added technology of the fiberglass mat, we were able to offer a gypsum sheathing that provided excellent protection in case of fire, but also had wonderful properties in terms of resistance to bulk water, resistance to delamination as a result of water, and really helped us to move into this new generation of more advanced building codes and higher performance. Now, Dens Glass Gold, wonderful product, but couldn't do everything by itself. And what we also saw in the 80s was a continued growth, continued learning in the building science arena, specifically around how do we keep water out of our buildings. And so at the same time, we started to see introduction of certain products like building wraps, which could be used as water-resistant barriers, arguably in place of more traditional products like felt papers, but realistically with considerable enhancements, so offering much better performance in terms of keeping out bulk water. So back in the 1980s, building science is evolving, buildings and construction in general are improving, and we have this wonderful combination of Dens Glass Gold and our glass mat faced gypsum and commercial building wraps. Fast forward a little bit more into the 2000s, and we've continued to grow our learnings and our understandings. Now we recognize that moisture doesn't only come in a liquid form. We also want to address moisture as it's carried by, as an example, unwanted air movement. And so we're starting to think about air barriers as well as water resistive barriers. And we're looking at other technologies like those products that might be used below grade, like those products that might be used on roof systems. And we're starting to understand that perhaps one of the weak links in some of these new systems is the ability to install. So we're looking at how can certain technologies increase the likelihood of success for the building by making the installation practice simpler and more efficient, less likely to have mistakes. And so you start to see certain products like thick applied liquid barriers now taking on that role of the water resistive barrier and the air barrier. Now here again, you still have products such as DensGlass Gold that are really doing the heavy lifting in terms of fire performance. So still wonderful, wonderful substrate for all of these new technologies in the WRB and air barrier space. But you see this progression. And so we look at about 10 years ago now, really where we had hit a peak when we recognized that, hey, yes, in fact, the DensGlass Gold does a lot of heavy lifting. Perhaps the best way for us to address continuity of our air barrier is to start back at the DensGlass and address our joints and seams, rough openings and penetrations, any areas where there might be unwanted air movement. And then that allows us to come over with maybe a thinner coating. So we start to see the advent of these thin liquid WRB products. All of that led to about 2015. And in 2015, Georgia-Pacific once again decided to change the game and change design, still continuing with the reassurance of our gold exterior wall colors, but with the introduction of the DensElement Barrier System. So Georgia-Pacific recognized that codes are going to continue to evolve. Now a water resistive barrier and an air barrier are expected to exist on every building. The performance of those buildings is expected to increase as well. So whereas before we wanted to improve energy efficiency, we see a future where net zero energy is possible in buildings. We see that being justified or rather determined by whole building air testing and building commissioning. And we think that this is going to apply to both new and existing buildings. So we need these new technologies and solutions that are going to allow us to bring this higher level of performance to our buildings, but we're still faced with the difficulty of less labor in the market and traditionally higher performance going hand in hand with more difficulty of installation. So therefore, with the DensElement Barrier System, we tried to address a number of things. How do we create a better, higher performing building, but make it accessible to trades so that it doesn't decrease the chances of success by being more difficult to install? And so that's exactly what we have in the DensElement Barrier System. And let me talk a little bit about that simplicity. So to begin with, the DensElement sheathing, which I'm going to dive in deeper, really does the lion's share of the work. It makes up the opaque wall from a structural gypsum sheathing standpoint, but also from a WRB standpoint. So in this case, the sheathing acts as a WRB product. Now, we know that to have a continuous water resistive barrier, WRB, as well as an air barrier, we need to address any other areas where there might be leaks or opportunity for air to move in. And so we tie the sheathing together with our DensDefy liquid flashing, a liquid flashing product that is both easy to apply, has some wonderful weather properties that I'll speak to in a minute, and cures very quickly, so it's not going to delay construction. And with those two products, you have a complete solution. A wall constructed with DensElement sheathing, where joints, seams, and penetrations are sealed with the DensDefy liquid flashing, provides a complete water resistive barrier and air barrier on your building. A lot of questions that people have are specifically around, hey, how can this work? The sheathing, I understand, is different than DensGlass. It's still the same gold color, new logo. What's really different? And the answer to that question is our AquaCore technology. And without getting myself into trouble and going too deep into this, I can tell you that AquaCore is a very unique process and chemical change to our sheathing, where the DensGlass itself really is an evolution into our DensElement sheathing, into a product that goes well beyond an exterior gypsum sheathing and allows it to act as a water-resistive barrier. And you don't have to just take my word for it or Georgia Pacific's word for it. We wanted the best in this product, and so we went outside, all of this done via third-party testing, but we wanted to make sure that we were exceeding standards that existed today. So with our baseline being a product such as DensGlass Gold coated in a water-resistive barrier coating, we said, hey, what does that standard look like? What is the performance criteria that needs to be met there? And so we went out and we worked with the ICC, the International Code Council, and we met or exceeded all of the testing required for acceptance criteria 212, so AC 212, which allows us to say that yes, in fact, DensElement Barrier System performs as well or better than code-accepted water-resistive barriers. Now, at the same time, we looked to our friends in the Air Barrier Association of America for guidance in how to test to standards for a high-performance air barrier assembly. And then we looked to our friends at AMA for what a liquid flashing should really look like and how it should perform. And so you'll see that DensElement Barrier System does meet AC 212. It does comply with AMA standards for air barrier assemblies, and the liquid flashing component is AMA 714 approved. So I mentioned a number of times the liquid flashing and the DensElement Barrier System. In reality, we launched in partnership with a company called Proseco, wonderful partnership and wonderful products. But earlier this year, Georgia Pacific recognized that we really want to make this entire system our own. And so in taking all of that on, we launched our DensDefy line of products, which is what I'm going to speak to for the rest of this presentation. And I'm going to show just a quick video clip so that you can see some of those products actually in action and being applied.
Building a better wall across the nation just got easier. We know your best work relies on ensuring the building envelope is tight and secure. With our new DensDefy Accessories, we're taking DensElement Barrier System's unique moisture management even further, closing the weatherproofing barrier for a faster, tighter envelope finish that's always compatible. Now DensDefy Liquid Flashing and DensDefy Transition Membrane have you covered, whatever your project needs. We've simplified the DensElement installation process, further evolving the envelope with a Georgia Pacific-backed liquid flashing. Rain or shine, easily seal all joints and seams to complete DensElement Barrier System in a flash. Need coverage across drift and expansion joints or waterproofing continuity across dissimilar materials? The versatile, all-new DensDefy Transition Membrane does the trick. Take the smarter sheathing route for easy installation that will take you from design to constructability without any guesswork in between. It's your job to build the best structure possible. It's ours to help you do it. With our new line of DensDefy accessories, the job just got a whole lot better. Our products stand for quality, so that your products can stand for themselves.
All right, so with that, let's jump right into these products, shall we? So DensDefy Liquid Flashing is one that I've mentioned several times and you saw in application there. And we're very excited about this product. It is a STP-based liquid flashing. It does meet AMA 714 standards. And what that means is it has wonderful elongation. This can be applied without a primer for gypsum. The STP technology allows for it actually to cure very quickly. It's a moisture cure product. And what that translates into is this is not a product that is going to be more troublesome in the case of certain weather events. If it has rained recently and the substrate is a little bit damp, if rain is coming and with other products there might be concerns about time for drying and curing, this product is going to perform exceptionally well. It also has a 12-month exposure warranty and can be left exposed for up to 12 months, and also has wonderful cold weather application. So again, we wanted products for this system that not only met the performance criteria and exceeded the performance criteria set forth by code, but that really helped our customers by being easy to apply and allowing our construction projects to continue to go on regardless of things like weather. You'll see that the DensDefy liquid flashing is used to seal up joints and seams, so for continuity of our water-resistive barrier as well as air barrier, to protect our rough openings and penetrations. We also use this, it is a requirement of the DensElement Barrier System to cover all fasteners when the sheathing is installed, and again, that is to maintain continuity of your water-resistive barrier and your air barrier. And these products are sold as 20-ounce sausages that can be really easily applied from any sausage gun, just like a standard caulking or sealant type of product. You also saw in the video a new product that we're very excited about, our DensDefy transition membrane. In this case, we use a butyl-based adhesive, again with a 12-month exposure, which is very hard to beat in the self-adhered membrane market. Allows for low temperature application, and really is used when we have situations like larger gaps where perhaps the liquid flashing could be used, but it might not be as economical, where we have potential movement such as control joints, such as transitions to dissimilar materials. And so this product allows for that good continuity of the system, regardless of those larger gaps, larger areas, regardless of opportunity for movement. And it does come in 6, 9, and 12-inch widths. And here you can see some examples of exactly what I'm talking about. So these larger gaps, these dissimilar materials, areas where we might expect some movement, and where the liquid flashing certainly could be used, but again, where the transition membrane might be something a little bit easier for our applicators and perhaps more economical in certain cases. And so both of these accessories are backed by our 12-month exposure warranty as well as our 10-year product warranty. Both products are compatible with each other and with the DensElement sheathing, and combined do make up our DensElement Barrier System. So that DensElement Barrier System is the DensElement sheathing, as well as the DensDefy liquid flashing, the DensDefy transition membrane, and all functioning together to, as I said, not only bring excellent performance to the building, but to allow for a faster and easier application and really good quality control because of the nature of the system, very easy to visually inspect to make sure that material has been applied. So with that, I'm going to end the presentation portion. I'm going to very quickly jump over and show myself. If I can figure out how to do that, apologize. This part isn't easy. And I'll give you actually a little bit of a direct view of what I'm talking about. So hopefully everyone can see me. And here is an example. Here's a sample of our DensElement Barrier System. Here you'll see what I'm talking about, our DensDefy liquid flashing already applied and meant to be installed to protect a rough opening in this case. The more traditional and always used sealing of joints and seams, and probably my favorite, round penetrations. Very, very, very difficult to apply a self-adhered membrane in that type of situation. Now over here on the other side, you'll see our DensDefy transition membrane. So as I mentioned, this is a larger gap. Perhaps in this case, you're going to use a backer rod. And certainly the DensDefy liquid flashing could be used in this case, but you'll find that the DensDefy transition membrane probably a little bit more economical as opposed to putting more and more of the liquid flashing into that seam. And then of course we do counter flash with the liquid flashing at the leading edges of that transition membrane. Something else you'll note, you see the brick tie. I mentioned already that we want fasteners to be sealed with the DensDefy liquid flashing, but in the case of the brick tie, that goes on after the installation of the sheathing. And you'll notice that the fasteners were not sealed for that brick tie. The reason being that, of course, the DensElement Barrier System does meet ASTM D1970, which is that nail sealability standard, even without the liquid flashing around things like cladding attachments. And of course, we've done some third-party testing, and by some I mean quite a lot and quite extensive third-party testing to back up those claims. So would strongly encourage everyone to visit our website, check out some of our newer white papers, specifically around range screen attachments and ability of range screen attachments to perform installed over the DensElement Barrier System. We were putting them in ASTM E331 tests with increasing pressures, increasing durations, to really see how these would behave in strong storms. So with that, I've kind of hit my 20 minutes. I want to give 10 for questions and answers, so kind of let Nitya take control from here.
Thank you, John. We do have some time for questions. So if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A forum, and I will ask John to answer them. So let's start with the questions. The first question that here's a question: is the transition flashing compatible with asphalt-based roof materials?
So the transition membrane is intended for exactly what it sounds like, to act as a transition material. Compatibility is really a question of two different products. So the transition membrane will absolutely adhere and is compatible with all of the DensElement, DensDefy, and Georgia-Pacific products. As to whether or not a roof membrane can be used in conjunction with it, it really depends on which product comes first. But I can tell you that we do have a number of cases where we are finding ways to tie in roof membranes, specifically at those parapet details that we're talking about. And what I would ask is that you're working with my technical services group as well as the roof membrane manufacturers technical services group to make sure that those are working well together.
Thank you, John. Another question is, how is your transition membrane different from typical peel and stick?
The big difference is certainly the performance. Our transition membrane has high elongation. I didn't mention, but should have, that it's also AMA 711 certified. The adhesive is tenacious in a way that very few peel and stick products that I've seen can match. But I think the biggest difference is the 12-month exposure. We can leave our transition membrane open to the elements for 12 months and we'll still warrant that it works and behaves well, which is really kind of second to none in the market today.
Okay, so here's a question about the video. They want to know, is that the flashing, was that a reverse lap at the window head in the video? I know it's very specific to you.
Sure. No, so in fact, I think what you're seeing there is a little bit of our marketing materials. So for the window and for the rough opening in this case, what we're really trying to demonstrate is the liquid flashing used to protect it. So there's no reverse lap. The entire thing is actually only protected with one product, that being the liquid flashing. And of course, that liquid flashing goes into the opening, connecting with the interior air sealant, as well as coming out onto the adjacent sheathing external from the rough opening.
Okay. And in which section would this product get specified?
Traditionally, we see DensElement Barrier System specified in Section 6, which is, of course, where you'll find your sheathing, and that's probably because it is a sheathing before anything else. However, we do see it specified in Section 7 as well, which is your water and thermal controls.
Okay. And what is the cure time for DensDefy?
The DensDefy will cure in a matter of hours, but it's usually dry to the touch with a skin over it, allowing for the next step in application, usually within half an hour to 45 minutes. And it depends really on weather and conditions. So in a higher temperature, higher humidity condition, it might be faster than that. In colder weather, lower humidity conditions, it might be a little bit slower than that, but always very quick to cure.
Okay. And what advantages does GP's liquid flashing and transition membrane have as compared to similar products?
I think the biggest advantage is, of course, that we are taking ownership and responsibility of all of those products, meaning that we have testing that validates the performance of all of those products in conjunction with one another. I think in terms of value to the customer, it's the speed, it's the ability to install almost regardless of weather conditions or coming weather conditions. And it's the guarantee that you're going to have a good product, not only because it comes from Georgia Pacific, but because you have such good visibility of the installation of that system.
Are there any materials that this assembly should not be used with?
No, not today. I think it's, again,
Okay.
that's a kind of a project-specific question. So it has a lot more to do with the systems being installed over it, most likely, and that would be something that our technical services group would love to help anyone with.
Okay. Is there any UV exposure criteria for these systems for behind the rain screens?
Behind rain screens.
Yeah.
No. So again, these products can be left exposed for a year. And in the case of rain screens, it's going to depend on the design. If this is an open joint system, which I think is what we're talking about, where there is going to be some degree of permanent exposure, we might have some additional guidance from our tech services, but we're going to want to deal with that on a case-to-case basis as well.
And what type of coverage do you get out of the tubes?
Well, I will tell you that the gentleman in the video, Tyson Lodge, got 80 linear feet at a 2-inch spread. So if you are going an inch on either side of a joint and seam, having about a 2-inch band in total, Tyson Lodge was able to get, I want to say 80. Some people might tell you 82 linear feet out of that sausage, but yeah, that is achievable for sure.
Okay. Do you certify applicators and subcontractors who use the DEN system?
Today, we don't have a certification program per se.
Okay.
We train, we offer wet wall demonstrations, and we're happy to help and troubleshoot on projects. We do lean pretty heavily on partners such as the Air Barrier Association of America and their certification programs.
Okay.
So that would be our recommendation.
Another question is that you mentioned it's a moisture cure product. Mm-hmm. What advantages, if any, does that provide?
The big advantages is the ability to continue to construct regardless of weather. So in situations where it's already rained and the substrates are somewhat damp, it's very difficult to install more traditional self-adhered and liquid products. If there's a concern that rain is going to come shortly after application, again, that can create difficulty with traditional self-adhered and liquid applied products. But in the case of the DensDefy liquid flashing, the moisture cure will actually tack up faster and allow for those products to continue to protect the building regardless of the weather coming.
Okay, so does that mean that the flashing and sealant can be installed in wet conditions too?
Yeah, wet. Now, wet being kind of a subjective word, of course, but yes, if the substrate is damp, it can be installed. If it is installed and it rains shortly after, not a concern there either. We'd probably recommend avoiding installing when it's actively raining at the time.
Okay. So what's the temperature range for install?
Temperature range, we recommend 25 degrees and rising. And that can be up to very, very, very hot.
Okay. And have you done comparative analysis to show how much we are able to save with this combo approach versus independent sheathing and a water barrier and an air barrier?
We have. That's an excellent question. Yeah. So we went to Home Innovations Labs, and we did have a time study performed comparing to liquid applied system as well as a more traditional building wrap system. And we found that we were able to install DensElement Barrier System in about 40% savings in terms of labor.
Okay. Thank you for that. One more question. How do your warranties apply when using an exterior finish system like EVES or DAFS?
Yeah, another great question. So because a traditional drained EFIS system includes that drainage cavity, we actually extend our warranty from 10 years to 12 years when DensElement Barrier System is used behind EVE systems.
Okay. What are the ASTM numbers on the air barrier?
2357, and I believe it's E2357 would be the assembly test that I would recommend. I assume that that's the question that's being asked there.
Yes. Has the testing results for sealing or not sealing at brick tie attachments changed? I think earlier it was Prosco products, or have they changed?
No. So a lot of our initial testing was done with Prosco, and yes, we've absolutely been able to validate that our DensDefy liquid flashing performs as well or better in all conditions.
Okay. Now, do you have a high temperature wrap for parapets?
Can you ask that one more time?
Does GP have a high temperature wrap?
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, not.
Yeah, no, so Georgia-Pacific does not offer a roofing membrane today. Our recommendation for parapets really begins at the substrate. So we have a product, DensDeck Prime, that we're going to encourage to be used in construction of the parapets. And of course, that has excellent fire properties as well. And by that, I mean resistance to fire. But we don't have a roof membrane product specifically.
Okay. Thank you, John. That's all the time we had for questions. Again, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and explaining the DensElement Barrier System. A recording of the democast will be available 1 week from now on. We will also send a link to the recording via email to all the registrants. Thanks to everyone who attended. Before you go, please take a few minutes to give us your feedback by completing our survey. It should appear in your browser after you close Zoom. Have a great afternoon and stay safe. Namaste.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.